Welcome to Sleepy Anime Stories. As you settle in, let the weight of the day fall away. Tonight, we continue our journey through the Hidden Leaf Village, through the story that defined a generation of ninja. In our previous chapter, we witnessed Naruto's determination solidify, watched as bonds were tested and friendships forged in the crucible of the Chunin exams. We saw Sasuke awaken powers he barely understood, felt the tremors as Orochimaru's invasion shook Konoha to its foundations, and stood witness as the third Hokage made his ultimate sacrifice. But now, as the dust settles and the village begins to heal, darker currents are stirring beneath the surface. Tonight, we turn our attention to a rift that will tear at the very heart of Team 7, a choice that will define the path forward, and a battle that will echo through every moment that follows. The events we're about to explore represent one of the most emotionally charged arcs in the entire Naruto saga. This is the story of how friendship can survive even when it seems irreparably broken, how bonds forged in childhood can endure the harshest tests, and how sometimes the people we care about most will walk paths we cannot follow. This is the story of Sasuke's descent into darkness, of Naruto's unwavering promise, and of the moment when two boys who grew up together stood on opposite sides of an impossible divide. So close your eyes if you wish, let the weight of sleep pull you gently down, and allow me to guide you through these final chapters of Naruto's original journey. The hospital room was quiet save for the rhythmic beeping of monitoring equipment. Sasuke Uchiha lay in that sterile white bed, but his body's stillness belied the tempest raging within his mind. Days had passed since his encounter with Itachi, days in which he had replayed every moment, every word, every reminder of his own inadequacy. The last Uchiha had come to Konoha, had effortlessly defeated Kakashi, their elite Jonin sensei, and had looked at Sasuke as if he were nothing more than an insect beneath his heel. The memories burned like acid in Sasuke's thoughts, each one a fresh wound that refused to heal. Itachi's words echoed endlessly through the corridors of his consciousness. His brother had told him he lacked hatred, that he was weak, that he would never be strong enough to challenge him. But more cutting than any insult was the casual dismissal, the way Itachi had barely acknowledged Sasuke's existence as a threat. In that moment, standing before his brother once more, Sasuke had felt exactly as he had that terrible night years ago, when the Uchiha compound ran red with blood, and a young boy discovered his entire world had been destroyed by the one person he trusted most. He was still that helpless child, frozen in terror, unable to change anything, unable to protect anyone, unable to even protect himself. The ceiling above his hospital bed might as well have been the sky above the Uchiha compound that night. Sasuke stared up at it, seeing not sterile white tiles, but the smoke-filled darkness of his past. Every moment since that massacre had been leading toward one singular goal, one burning purpose that gave shape to his existence: revenge. The word itself had become his identity, his reason for breathing, the drumbeat that drove him forward when everything else fell away. But Itachi's return had shown him with brutal clarity just how far he still had to go, how vast the gulf between his current strength and his brother's power truly was. And worse, much worse, was the realization that had been growing inside him like a cancer ever since the Chunin exams, ever since the invasion, ever since he had seen Naruto face down Gaara and emerge victorious. Naruto was getting stronger. The dead last of their academy class, the boy who couldn't even perform a basic clone jutsu, the orphan who everyone had written off as a failure, was surpassing him. The thought was like poison in Sasuke's veins. He had always been the prodigy, the gifted one, the last son of the illustrious Uchiha clan. From the moment he entered the academy, excellence had been expected of him, and he had delivered. Top of the class in every category, the most promising young ninja of his generation, the one all the girls wanted and all the boys wanted to surpass. That had been his identity, his armor against the pain of his past. If he was the strongest, if he was the best, then perhaps he could one day become strong enough to fulfill his purpose. But somewhere along the way, the ground had shifted beneath his feet. Naruto, ridiculous. Naruto with his orange jumpsuit and his stupid dream of becoming Hokage had begun to close the gap between them. It had started small, barely noticeable at first. A technique mastered here, a victory earned there. But then came the Chunin exams, and Naruto had learned the Rasengan, that spinning sphere of devastating power. Then came Gaara, the monster from the sand, and while Sasuke had been knocked unconscious, it was Naruto who had stood tall at the end. Naruto who had protected their friends. Naruto who had won. The knowledge gnawed at Sasuke's pride, like rats at a corpse. When Sasuke finally left the hospital, his body healed, but his spirit more damaged than any physical wound could account for. He sought out Naruto. It wasn't planned, wasn't something he consciously decided to do, but he found himself standing on the rooftop of the hospital, and there was Naruto, and suddenly all the frustration, all the fear, all the desperate need to prove himself came pouring out. They faced each other across that rooftop, and in Naruto's eyes, Sasuke saw something he couldn't stand. Understanding, compassion. As if Naruto could see right through his carefully constructed walls to the scared child beneath. Words were exchanged, challenges issued. Sasuke needed to know, needed to prove to himself that he was still stronger, that he hadn't been left behind completely. They clashed with Rasengan and Chidori, those signature techniques crackling with barely contained power. Kakashi intervened at the last possible moment, deflecting their attacks into the water towers that flanked the rooftop. The resulting explosions should have been equal, mirror images of their respective strengths. But they weren't. Sasuke's Chidori had punched a hole clean through the front of his water tower, impressive and precise. But when he turned to look at Naruto's target, his blood ran cold. The entire back wall had been blown out, completely obliterated, water rushing out in a cascading torrent. If Kakashi hadn't stopped their clash, if those techniques had connected not with water towers, but with flesh and bone, Naruto's attack would have killed him. The realization hit Sasuke like a physical blow. He had truly been surpassed. The gap he had been so desperately trying to ignore, trying to pretend didn't exist, was real. Naruto was stronger than him. Naruto, who had nothing, who came from nothing, who by all rights should have remained nothing, had somehow climbed higher than Sasuke Uchiha, heir to one of the most powerful clans in shinobi history. The unfairness of it, the cosmic joke of it, was almost too much to bear. Sasuke felt something inside him crack, a foundation he had built his entire identity upon beginning to crumble. Kakashi tried to counsel him afterward, pulling him aside to talk about the dangers of obsession with power, the poison of revenge, the importance of cherishing the bonds he still had, rather than destroying himself over the bonds he had lost. But Sasuke barely heard the words. What did Kakashi know of his pain? What did any of them understand about what it meant to be alone, truly alone, the last survivor of a massacre, orchestrated by the person you loved most in the world? Kakashi spoke of moving forward, of finding strength in protecting others, rather than destroying oneself through hatred. But to Sasuke, those words were meaningless platitudes. He didn't want to move forward. He wanted to go back, to undo, to make right what had been made wrong. And the only way to do that was through power, through becoming strong enough to make his brother pay for what he had done. The curse mark on his neck throbbed, a constant reminder of Orochimaru's touch during the Chunin exams. Kakashi had sealed it with the evil sealing method, but Sasuke could still feel it there, lurking beneath the surface, a reservoir of dark power waiting to be tapped. He had used it before, felt the surge of strength it provided, the intoxicating rush as his abilities multiplied. It was dangerous, Kakashi had warned. It would corrode his body and mind if he relied on it too much. But what was danger compared to weakness? What was corruption compared to being unable to fulfill his one purpose in life? The curse mark was proof that there were shortcuts to power, ways to gain strength faster than the slow, methodical training path that Kakashi prescribed, and time was something Sasuke didn't have. Itachi had made that brutally clear. The days following the rooftop confrontation were torture. Sasuke trained harder than ever, pushing his body to its limits and beyond, driving himself with a ferocity that worried even Sakura. But no matter how hard he trained, no matter how many hours he spent perfecting his Chidori or his Sharingan techniques, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was treading water while others swam past him. Naruto wasn't the only one growing stronger. Sakura had been taken on as Tsunade's apprentice, beginning her journey toward becoming a medical ninja. Shikamaru had been promoted to Chunin, recognized for his brilliant tactical mind. Even the others, his former classmates and rivals, were all advancing, all improving, all moving forward with their lives and their goals. And Sasuke, despite all his natural talent, despite his prestigious bloodline, felt himself falling further behind. It was in this state of desperate frustration that the Sound Four found him. They appeared one evening as he walked alone through the village, four ninja he had never seen before, wearing strange uniforms and regarding him with a mixture of respect and calculation. They introduced themselves as servants of Orochimaru, and they brought with them an invitation. Their master had been impressed by Sasuke during the Chunin exams. They said he saw potential in the young Uchiha, potential that was being wasted in Konoha. Orochimaru could offer him something the Hidden Leaf never could. They promised power. Real power. The kind of strength that could let him achieve his goals, that could make him strong enough to face Itachi and emerge victorious. Sasuke's first instinct was to refuse, to send them away, or even to attack them for their insolence. But they didn't threaten him or try to kidnap him. Instead, they demonstrated. The leader among them activated a strange marking on his neck, and before Sasuke's eyes, the man's body transformed, his strength multiplying visibly. This was the gift Orochimaru could provide, they explained. The curse mark, fully realized, fully mastered. And that was just the beginning. Under Orochimaru's tutelage, Sasuke could learn techniques and gain powers that would take decades to acquire through conventional training. The question was simple. Did Sasuke want revenge, or did he just want to play at being a ninja in Konoha, comfortable and safe but ultimately weak? To drive home their point, the Sound Four attacked him, all four at once. Even working together with all his skill and his Sharingan activated, Sasuke couldn't stand against them for more than moments. They overwhelmed him effortlessly, leaving him beaten and humiliated in the dirt. As they stood over him, they asked him to consider their master's offer. Sasuke could stay in Konoha, could continue on his slow path to strength, and maybe in 10 years or 20 years, he might be strong enough to challenge Itachi, or he could come with them, could accept Orochimaru's training, and become powerful in a fraction of that time. The choice, they said, was his. They would return for his answer. In the days that followed, Sasuke wrestled with the decision. He knew, on some level, that going to Orochimaru was wrong. The snake Sannin had invaded Konoha, had killed the third Hokage, had proven himself an enemy of everything Sasuke's home stood for. To join him would be betrayal, would make Sasuke a traitor and a deserter. But against that knowledge stood the cold, hard truth that his current path wasn't working. He wasn't getting stronger fast enough. At his current rate of progress, by the time he was ready to face Itachi, his brother would be even further out of reach, or worse, would be dead, killed by someone else. And Sasuke's entire life's purpose would be rendered meaningless. The thought of someone else defeating Itachi, of being robbed even of his revenge, was unbearable. Sakura noticed the change in him, the distance and darkness that seemed to be consuming him from within. One night, she came to him, unable to sleep, driven by some premonition of disaster. She found Sasuke preparing to leave the village, a small pack already prepared. When she confronted him, when she asked him where he was going, he couldn't bring himself to lie to her directly. Instead, he told her a partial truth. He was leaving Konoha. He was going to seek power elsewhere, and she couldn't stop him. Sakura's reaction was immediate and visceral. She begged him to stay, tears streaming down her face as she pleaded with him not to throw his life away, not to abandon the people who cared about him. She confessed her feelings for him, laid bare her heart with a vulnerability that would have moved anyone with even a shred of emotional openness. But Sasuke was beyond being reached by such appeals. His heart had been encased in ice years ago, frozen by loss and hatred. Sakura's tears, her confessions, her desperate pleas, they were like rain falling on stone, unable to penetrate, unable to change anything. He told her, with a coldness that shocked even himself, that she was annoying, that her feelings were a burden he didn't want or need, that she understood nothing about his pain or his purpose. Sakura, in her desperation, even offered to go with him, to leave everything behind if he would just take her along, if he would just not leave her alone. But Sasuke knew that wasn't possible, knew that the path he was choosing would lead to dark places that someone like Sakura, someone still innocent and hopeful, couldn't follow. So instead, he put her under a genjutsu, a simple illusion that caused her to collapse into unconsciousness. He caught her before she hit the ground, lowered her gently to sit against a bench, and for a moment, he allowed himself to look at her sleeping face. Some small part of him, some fragment of the boy he used to be, felt something like regret, but he pushed it down, buried it deep. Regret was a luxury he couldn't afford. Weakness was a luxury he couldn't afford. With one last look at his teammate, his friend, the girl who had loved him since they were children, Sasuke Uchiha turned away and walked into the darkness, heading toward the village gates, and the Sound Four waiting beyond them, heading toward betrayal and power, and a path from which there might be no return. The curse mark burned on his neck as he left, pulsing with dark energy, as if sensing his decision and approving of it. In accepting Orochimaru's offer, Sasuke wasn't just choosing a teacher or a source of power. He was choosing darkness over light, vengeance over healing, solitude over companionship. He was choosing to become the very thing his brother had tried to make him into, a vessel of hatred, a weapon pointed at a single target with no regard for anything else. And perhaps most tragic of all, he was choosing to define himself entirely by his past, by his pain, by the single worst moment of his life, allowing that moment to consume everything he was and everything he might have become. As the Hidden Leaf's gates disappeared behind him, swallowed by the forest and the night. Sasuke felt a strange mixture of emotions. There was relief that the decision was finally made, that he no longer had to pretend to be part of Team 7 or care about the bonds they had formed. There was anticipation of the power he would gain, the strength that would finally let him achieve his goals. But beneath all that, buried so deep he barely acknowledged it himself, there was also fear. Not fear of Orochimaru or the path ahead, but fear that he was making a mistake. Fear that in seeking to avenge his family, he was betraying the only new family he had found. Fear that in trying to reclaim his past, he was destroying his future. But Sasuke pushed that fear down along with all his other weak emotions, hardened his heart, and walked on into the darkness, toward Orochimaru, toward power, toward a destiny he was choosing for himself, even if it meant losing everything else in the process. The 4 ninja who appeared to collect Sasuke were far more than simple messengers. They were known as the Sound Four, an elite unit that served as Orochimaru's personal bodyguards and most trusted operatives. Each of them was a formidable warrior in their own right, and together they represented a significant portion of Orochimaru's military strength. To understand why their involvement in Sasuke's defection was so significant, we need to understand who these individuals were, where they came from, and what made them so dangerous. The story of the Sound Four begins not with glory or honor, but with survival, with pain, and with the same dark bargains that Sasuke himself was now making. Long before they served Orochimaru willingly, the members of the Sound Four were his prisoners. In the depths of his various hideouts and laboratories, the Snake Sannin conducted experiments on subjects both willing and unwilling, testing the limits of the human body, pushing the boundaries of what ninja could become through artificial enhancement. Among these experiments were brutal battle royales, forced combats to the death where prisoners fought each other for the slim chance of survival. These weren't tests of skill or honor. They were raw, desperate struggles where only the strongest, the most cunning, and the most ruthless could hope to see another day. The individuals who would become the Sound Four survived these hellish trials, proved themselves to be the absolute strongest among Orochimaru's experimental subjects. Their reward for surviving was not freedom, but rather a different kind of servitude. They became Orochimaru's elite bodyguards, bound to him not by loyalty, but by the simple fact that there was nowhere else for them to go. The first among them was Jirobo, a massive man who appeared much older than his actual age of 14. His size and strength were prodigious, making him look like he belonged among adult warriors rather than teenage Genin. Jirobo's power lay in raw physical might combined with earth-style jutsu that allowed him to manipulate the battlefield itself. His signature technique was the Earth Dome Prison, a jutsu that trapped opponents within a spherical barrier of solidified earth. But the dome did more than simply imprison its victims. It actively drained their chakra, feeding their life energy to Jirobo himself, allowing him to grow stronger even as his enemies weakened. This made him exceptionally dangerous in prolonged encounters, as time itself became his ally. Jirobo represented brute force in its purest form. He wasn't particularly clever or subtle in his approach to combat. He didn't need to be. His defensive techniques were nearly impenetrable. His offensive capabilities could shatter stone and bone with equal ease, and his ability to drain enemy chakra meant that even opponents who could initially match his strength would eventually succumb to exhaustion. He took pride in his position as the Sound Four's South Gate, and his role as the team's foundation and defensive anchor. When Jirobo activated the second stage of his cursed seal, his skin would turn a deep red, his body would swell with additional muscle mass, and wart-like protrusions would appear across his shoulders and forehead. In this form, his strength multiplied by a factor of 10, allowing him to perform feats of raw power that seemed to defy physical law. The second member was Kidamaru, a 6-armed ninja whose spider-like abilities made him a nightmare in combat. His body could produce a sticky, golden substance that functioned as both webbing and as raw material for constructing weapons. Kidamaru could create bows and arrows from this substance, firing projectiles with such force and precision that they could pierce through seemingly any defense. His spiderweb techniques allowed him to control the battlefield, creating traps and obstacles that limited enemy movement while giving him perfect information about their locations. Any vibration on his web would tell him exactly where his opponents were, making it nearly impossible to hide from him. What made Kidamaru particularly dangerous was his intelligence and tactical acumen. He was a thinker, someone who analyzed his opponent's patterns and abilities before exploiting their weaknesses with surgical precision. He had completed an impressive number of high-rank missions for someone so young, including at least one S-rank operation that likely involved the assassination of the 4th Kazakage. When Kidamaru entered his second cursed seal state, his transformation was dramatic and horrifying. His skin would turn dark brown and take on a chitinous quality. Additional arms would sprout from his body, giving him even greater weapon-wielding capability. And his face would morph into something resembling a demonic spider-oni hybrid. He would grow a horn from his head, and his third eye would open, granting him enhanced visual perception that eliminated his one significant weakness. The third member was Tayuya, the only female among the Sound Four, and one of the most dangerous genjutsu users in the entire original Naruto series. Her abilities centered around her flute and the haunting melodies she could produce with it. These weren't simple illusions of sight or sound. Tayuya's genjutsu worked on a level that bypassed normal mental defenses, attacking the victim's consciousness directly through auditory pathways. Those who heard her phantom melody would find themselves paralyzed, their bodies refusing to obey their commands, while their minds were assaulted by horrifying visions. Even Shikamaru Nara, one of the most intelligent and perceptive ninja of his generation, acknowledged that Tayuya's skills were at Jonin level, far beyond what should be expected from someone technically still ranked as a genin. Beyond her genjutsu, Tayuya could also perform summoning jutsu, calling forth massive demonic creatures called the Doki. These 3 giant ogres were not only physically powerful, but could also serve as instruments for her music, their bodies functioning as amplifiers and transmitters for her genjutsu. The combination made Tayuya extraordinarily difficult to fight, as she could assault enemies on multiple fronts simultaneously, never giving them a moment to breathe or plan. Her personality matched her abilities, sharp-tongued and aggressive, with a vocabulary that would make sailors blush. She claimed to be the second strongest member of the Sound Four, inferior only to their de facto leader. When her cursed seal reached its second stage, her skin would darken and take on a spotted pattern, her hair would turn white, and a single horn would emerge from her forehead, giving her an almost demonic appearance. The 4th position in the Sound Four was actually occupied by 2 people, Sakon and Ukon, twin brothers who shared a unique ability that made them perhaps the most troublesome members of the entire group. Their Kekkei Genkai allowed them to merge their bodies with each other or with other people at the cellular level. Normally, Ukon's body remained merged with Sakon's, only emerging when needed for combat. This gave them a significant tactical advantage, as opponents would initially believe they were fighting one person, only to discover they were facing 2. But the true horror of their ability revealed itself when they merged with enemies. By fusing with an opponent at the molecular level, they could attack the victim's cells directly from the inside. killing them in one of the most brutal and unstoppable ways imaginable. Sakon and Ukon's fighting style was aggressive and arrogant. They boasted frequently about their superiority and had little patience for opponents who didn't immediately recognize their power. When they activated their second cursed seal state, they could separate more easily and for longer periods. They would grow dark, armor-like protrusions on their split form that could regenerate if damaged, making them incredibly difficult to defeat, even when divided. Their ability to merge also extended to summoning techniques, as they could call forth the massive Rashomon gates that served as nearly impenetrable defensive barriers. The twins' relationship with each other was complex, sometimes cooperative and sometimes contentious, but in battle, they functioned with perfect synchronization. These four individuals, each powerful and dangerous in their own right, became even more formidable when they worked together. They had developed combination techniques that took advantage of their individual specialties, creating a team that could handle threats far beyond what their individual ranks would suggest. But there was a fifth member, or rather, there had been until shortly before the events surrounding Sasuke's defection. His name was Kimimaro, and he was supposed to be the leader of the group when they were known as the Sound Five. Kimimaro was something special even by the Sound Four's standards. He possessed a Kekkei Genkai called Shikotsumiyaku, the dead bone pulse, which gave him complete control over his skeletal structure. He could grow bones anywhere on his body, could increase or decrease their density at will, could use them as weapons or as armor. This made him nearly impossible to defeat in close combat, as he could simultaneously attack and defend, with bone spikes protruding from every part of his body. His taijutsu skills were considered among the finest in the world, and Orochimaru himself had designated Kimimaro as his next host body, the vessel into which the Snake Sannin would transfer his consciousness when his current body expired. But fate, it seemed, had other plans. Kimimaro contracted a rare and terminal illness that caused his body to betray itself, turning his greatest strength into a fatal weakness. His unique physiology, so radically different from normal human anatomy due to his constant bone manipulation, made it impossible for even Kabuto's medical expertise to treat his condition. The disease progressed rapidly, forcing Kimimaro to withdraw from active service with the Sound Four, which reverted to being called by their original designation. He remained bedridden in Orochimaru's hideout, slowly dying, his dreams of serving his master reduced to helpless observation as his body failed him piece by piece. But we'll return to Kimimaro later, because his role in the story is far from over. For now, what matters is that these were the individuals Orochimaru sent to retrieve Sasuke Uchiha. They weren't just any random ninja, they were some of the most powerful operatives in the Sound Village's arsenal, warriors who had proven themselves through blood and survival, who had been enhanced by cursed seals that multiplied their already formidable abilities. Orochimaru was serious about acquiring Sasuke, serious enough to risk his most valuable subordinates on the retrieval mission. And that fact alone should have been a warning to everyone in Konoha about just how dangerous the situation was about to become. The Sound Four's mission was relatively straightforward in concept, though dangerous in execution. They were to escort Sasuke from Konoha to one of Orochimaru's hideouts in the Land of Sound Speed was essential, as they had to cross the border before Konoha's forces could mobilize an effective pursuit. To facilitate Sasuke's safe transport and to prepare his body for the full advancement of the cursed seal, they placed him in a barrel-shaped coffin while he underwent a kind of induced transformation coma. This would allow his cursed seal to develop to its second stage. While protecting his unconscious body during the journey, the Sound Four would serve as his guards and transporters, dealing with any interference that arose. But there was more to their mission than simple escort duty. The Sound Four had been given specific instructions regarding Sasuke's development. Orochimaru wanted Sasuke to come to him not as a prisoner or a subordinate, but as someone who had chosen power over everything else, someone who had made the decisive break from Konoha of his own free will. The curse mark wasn't just a source of power, it was also a tool of corruption, gradually eroding the user's moral inhibitions, amplifying their darker emotions, turning them into the kind of person who could justify any action in pursuit of their goals. The time Sasuke spent in that coffin, his body transforming while his mind drifted in darkness, was a crucial part of that process. Each member of the Sound Four wore their uniforms with pride. The distinctive pattern on their clothes was a modified yin-yang symbol, but with the black portion missing, leaving only white and the red outline. This visual representation carried symbolic weight. In traditional philosophy, yin and yang represent balance, the interplay of opposing forces that creates harmony. By removing the yin, the darkness, the symbol became unbalanced, representing the fundamental imbalance in the Sound Four themselves. They were powerful, but their power came at the cost of stability, of wholeness. They had survived Orochimaru's experiments, but they had been fundamentally changed by that survival, warped into weapons rather than fully realized human beings. The cursed seals each of them bore were Orochimaru's masterpieces of biological manipulation. By combining his own Senjutsu chakra with enzymes extracted from Jugo's blood, a young man whose body naturally absorbed and transformed natural energy, Orochimaru had created a method to grant others access to sage-like power without the years of training normally required. The cursed seals worked by absorbing the wielder's chakra and feeding them Orochimaru's modified Senjutsu chakra in return, dramatically increasing their physical abilities and chakra reserves. But this power came with a terrible price. The seals were addictive, making users crave the rush of strength they provided. They were corrosive, gradually wearing down the user's body with each activation, and they were corrupting, carrying fragments of Orochimaru's consciousness that slowly influenced the wielder's thoughts and emotions. The second stage of the cursed seal, which the Sound Four could all access at will, represented a complete transformation of the body. Users would take on monstrous forms, their humanity subsumed beneath layers of mutation and power. Eyes would turn yellow with black sclera, skin would change color and texture, and entirely new features might emerge. Wings, additional limbs, horns, or other inhuman characteristics. In these forms, the user's power would multiply exponentially, but they would also become less stable, more prone to acting on violent impulses, less capable of complex thought. It was the ultimate expression of Orochimaru's philosophy: power at any cost, strength purchased with one's humanity, the transformation of people into living weapons with no purpose beyond serving their master's will. As the Sound Four traveled through the forests with their precious cargo, they were confident in their abilities. They had fought together countless times, had perfected their team tactics, and each of them was powerful enough to threaten even Jonin-level opponents. Moreover, they didn't expect serious resistance. Sasuke had left of his own free will after all. By the time Konoha realized he was gone and organized any kind of pursuit, the Sound Four expected to be well beyond the reach of any recovery effort. They had contingency plans and prepared defensive positions. They had scouted their route and identified choke points where they could deal with pursuers efficiently. Everything was proceeding according to plan. What they hadn't counted on was the determination of Sasuke's friends, the resourcefulness of a newly promoted Chunin named Shikamaru Nara, and the promise one orange-clad ninja had made to a pink-haired girl who loved someone she couldn't save. Dawn had not yet broken when Sakura regained consciousness. She found herself still sitting on the bench where Sasuke had left her, her body stiff from spending hours in an awkward position, her face stained with dried tears. For a moment, she couldn't remember what had happened, why she was outside, why her heart felt like it had been torn from her chest. Then the memories came flooding back: Sasuke, the conversation, his cold dismissal, the genjutsu. He was gone. The realization hit her like a physical blow, and she began to run, her feet carrying her through the still sleeping village toward the Hokage's office. She had to tell someone. She had to stop this somehow. She had to do something, anything, to bring him back. The Hokage's office was quiet when she burst through the door, startling the guards who stood watch. She demanded to see Lady Tsunade, her voice cracking with desperation. When she was told the Hokage was resting and couldn't be disturbed, Sakura's hands clenched into fists. She wasn't some helpless girl anymore. She was a kunoichi of the Hidden Leaf, and one of her teammates had just deserted. This was an emergency. The guards, seeing the steel beneath her tears, relented and sent for their leader. Tsunade arrived minutes later, still pulling on her robe, her expression shifting from irritation at being woken to grave concern as Sakura explained what had happened. The fifth Hokage acted with swift decisiveness. Within minutes, alerts were being sent out, and key personnel were being summoned. The situation was worse than just a simple desertion. Sasuke Uchiha was the last surviving member of one of Konoha's most prestigious clans, possessed the Sharingan, and had knowledge of numerous village secrets and techniques. If he reached Orochimaru, the consequences could be catastrophic. The Snake Sannin could use Sasuke's body as a vessel, could extract the Sharingan's secrets, could gain access to Uchiha techniques that were supposed to have died with the clan. This wasn't just about saving one boy. It was about preventing a significant military intelligence disaster. Moreover, most of Konoha's forces were already deployed on missions. In the aftermath of the invasion, and with the village still rebuilding, there simply weren't many Jonin or Chunin available for immediate assignment. This is where Shikamaru Nara entered the picture. The newly promoted Chunin was summoned to the Hokage's office, where Tsunade explained the situation to him. With brutal honesty, Sasuke had defected. They needed a team to pursue him immediately, and due to the shortage of available personnel, that team would consist of genin, with Shikamaru as their leader. It would be his first mission as a Chunin, his first time leading a squad into potential combat, and the stakes couldn't be higher. Shikamaru, whose default response to any troublesome situation was to complain about the hassle involved, understood immediately that this was serious. Tsunade wouldn't assign such a critical mission to untested genin unless there were literally no other options. The village was that stretched thin. Tsunade gave him 30 minutes to assemble a team of 4 genin who were currently in the village and not on missions. Shikamaru's mind immediately began calculating probabilities and capabilities. He needed a tracking specialist, someone who could follow Sasuke's trail. He needed combat power, people who could fight if they caught up to Sasuke's escorts. He needed versatility, skills that could handle unknown situations, and he needed people who wouldn't give up, who would see the mission through no matter how difficult it became. Names began forming in his mind, a roster of the reliable, the capable, the determined. This would require everything he had learned at the academy and during the Chunin exams. This would require him to be a true leader, not just someone who was smart, but lazy. His first recruit was Naurto Uzumaki, recommended by Tsunade herself. Shikamaru might have picked him anyway, since Naruto's stake in this mission was deeply personal. Sasuke wasn't just a target to retrieve for Naruto. He was a teammate, a rival, someone Naruto considered a precious person despite all their arguments and competitions. If anyone could convince Sasuke to return voluntarily, it would be Naruto. And if it came to fighting, Naruto's abilities had grown tremendously. The Nine-Tails Jinchuriki was no longer the dead last of their class. He had proven himself against Gaara, had mastered the Rasengan, and had a determination that bordered on supernatural. With Naruto on the team, they at least had a powerhouse, someone who could match most opponents through sheer force of will, if nothing else. His second recruit was Choji Akimichi, his best friend and longtime teammate from the Inoshika-cho formation. Choji's abilities would be crucial if they encountered enemies who relied on brute force. His expansion jutsu could turn him into a massive boulder capable of crushing through defenses, and his clan's special pills could multiply his power several times over in dire emergencies. More importantly, Shikamaru knew Choji's heart. The gentle giant would follow him anywhere, would trust his leadership implicitly, and would fight with everything he had to protect his friends. That kind of loyalty and dedication couldn't be taught or trained. It was simply part of who Choji was, and Shikamaru was grateful to have him at his side. His third recruit was Kiba Inuzuka, the feral young ninja from the Inuzuka clan who fought alongside his ninja dog partner Akamaru. Kiba was brash and often overconfident, but his tracking abilities were exceptional. With Akamaru's enhanced sense of smell, they could follow a trail through any terrain and under almost any conditions. Kiba's fighting style, combining animal-like agility with synchronized attacks from both him and Akamaru, made him a versatile combatant who could handle multiple types of opponents. And like Naruto, Kiba had something to prove, a desire to show that he was more than just a loud mouth, that he could complete serious missions when it mattered. The fourth position was filled by Neji Hyuga, arguably the most skilled genin among their generation. Neji's Byakugan gave the team reconnaissance capabilities that would be invaluable, allowing them to scout ahead and detect ambushes before walking into them. His gentle fist, taijutsu style, was devastatingly effective against most opponents, capable of shutting down their chakra systems and ending fights quickly. And Neji had recently undergone a profound change in his philosophy and attitude. After his defeat by Naruto during the Chunin exams, after learning the truth about his father's death, Neji had abandoned his belief in unchangeable destiny and embraced the idea that people could forge their own paths. This new Neji was more open, more cooperative, more willing to fight for causes beyond himself. He would be an asset to the team in every possible way. Before the team departed, Rock Lee approached them at the village gates. He had just recently recovered from his injuries, sustained during the Chunin exams and his subsequent surgery, but he desperately wanted to join the mission. Sasuke was his rival too, after all, and the mission was to save a comrade. What could be more important than that? But Shikamaru, understanding Lee's current condition and the risks involved, convinced him to stay behind and recover fully. It was a difficult conversation, but Lee ultimately accepted the decision, though he made Neji promise to bring Sasuke back safely. None of them could have predicted that Lee's role in this mission was far from over, that he would yet have a crucial part to play in the events to come. The final person to see them off was Sakura. She found them at the gates, her eyes red from crying, but her expression determined. She approached Naruto directly, ignoring the others, and she begged him to bring Sasuke back. Her voice broke as she spoke, her carefully maintained composure crumbling under the weight of her emotions. She loved Sasuke, she said. She had always loved him, would always love him, no matter what he did or where he went. But she knew she couldn't bring him back herself. She wasn't strong enough yet, wasn't skilled enough yet. So she was asking Naruto, pleading with him, to do what she couldn't to find Sasuke, to fight him if necessary, to drag him back to Konoha by force if that's what it took, because Sasuke couldn't throw his life away like this. He just couldn't. Naruto listened to her plea, saw the tears streaming down her face, felt the weight of her desperation and fear, and he made her a promise. He would bring Sasuke back, no matter what it took, no matter how difficult it became, no matter what stood in his way, he would find Sasuke and bring him home. It was a reckless promise, the kind of absolute commitment that no rational person would make. But Naruto had never been particularly rational when it came to his precious people. Sakura was his teammate, his friend, someone he cared about deeply. And Sasuke, despite everything, despite the coldness and the rivalry and the apparent indifference, was also precious to Naruto. They were Team 7. They had fought together, trained together, nearly died together. That bond meant something. It had to mean something. So Naruto made his promise with complete sincerity, with his trademark grin and his unshakable confidence. And Sakura, hearing those words, felt the tiniest spark of hope kindle in her heart. With that promise given and received, the Sasuke recovery team set out. Shikamaru established their formation immediately, positioning each member according to their specialties. Kiba and Akamaru took point, using their superior tracking abilities to follow Sasuke's scent trail. Shikamaru came next, positioned to give orders and coordinate their movements while maintaining a wide field of vision. Naruto was in the middle, ready to respond to threats from any direction with his shadow clones. Choji followed Naruto, his eyes constantly scanning their flanks. And Neji brought up the rear, his Byakugan activated, serving as their eyes behind them and detecting any pursuers or ambushes. It was a solid formation, one that played to each member's strengths while covering their weaknesses. They moved quickly through the forests, following the trail that Kiba and Akamaru easily detected. The Sound Four hadn't bothered to hide their path, confident in their head start and their ability to deal with any pursuit. But as the hours passed and the sun climbed higher in the sky, it became clear that the enemy had underestimated Konoha's determination. The gap was closing, the trail was growing fresher, and somewhere ahead, moving through their own territory, with Sasuke trapped in his coffin, the Sound Four were about to discover that retrieving a single genin was going to be significantly more difficult than they had anticipated. The chase was on, and every step took both teams closer to a series of confrontations that would test everyone involved to their absolute limits. The forest exploded into violence without warning. One moment, the Sasuke recovery team was pursuing their target through dense vegetation, and the next, they were trapped. The ground beneath their feet transformed as Jirobo's Earth Dome prison technique activated, creating a spherical barrier that encased all 5 of them in hardened earth. The walls glowed with a sickly chakra light as the dome began its insidious work, draining the life energy from everyone trapped inside. Above them, through the earth, they could hear mocking laughter. The Sound Four had been waiting, had prepared this trap, and now the pursuers had become the prey. Kiba pounded against the walls, Akamaru adding his own attacks, but the earth absorbed their strikes without so much as a crack appearing. Neji examined the barrier with his Byakugan, tracing the flow of chakra through its structure, looking for weak points. What he found was disturbing. The dome was constantly draining their chakra at an accelerating rate. If they didn't escape soon, they would all be rendered unconscious, helpless before whatever the Sound Four planned to do next. Shikamaru's mind raced through possibilities, calculating and discarding strategies at lightning speed. They needed a plan, and they needed it fast. Meanwhile, outside the dome, the Sound Four prepared to depart. They had bought themselves time, and that was all they needed. Let Konoha's genin exhaust themselves trying to escape. By the time they freed themselves, if they managed to at all, the Sound Four would be long gone. But they had underestimated their opponents in 2 crucial ways. First, they had underestimated Neji's Byakugan. The Hyuga's vision pierced through the earth barrier, analyzing its structure and identifying the weakest points where the chakra flow was slightly less dense. Second, they had underestimated their determination. Naruto created shadow clones. Kiba and Akamaru prepared their combined attacks. and Choji readied his expansion jutsu. At Neji's direction, they all struck the same point simultaneously, their combined force exceeding what Jirobo's technique could withstand. The dome shattered from within, sending chunks of earth flying in all directions. The Sasuke recovery team emerged, battered but free, only to find that their enemies had already departed, leaving Jirobo behind as a rear guard. The massive ninja turned to face them with a confident smirk. 1 on 5 were odds he could handle, especially since his Earth Dome had already weakened them. But Choji, urged on by Shikamaru, stayed behind to fight him while the others pursued. It was a calculated risk. They were splitting their forces, leaving one member alone to face an opponent who had already proven capable of trapping all 5 of them. But time was everything in this mission. Every second they delayed was another second Sasuke got further away. Someone had to slow down the Sound 4's rear guard, and Choji volunteered without hesitation. His teammates trusted him, Shikamaru especially, and they rushed forward into the forest, leaving behind the sound of battle as Choji and Jirobo clashed. What followed was a grueling contest between raw power and unyielding determination. Jirobo activated the first stage of his cursed seal, his body swelling with muscle mass as dark marks spread across his skin. His strength multiplied, and he began to dominate the fight, landing crushing blows that drove Choji back step by step. He mocked the Akimichi boy for his weight, for his perceived weakness, for his loyalty to friends who had abandoned him to fight alone. Those words, meant to demoralize, had the opposite effect. Choji's gentle nature hid a core of absolute determination when it came to his friends. He would not let Jirobo pass. He would not let his teammates down, and he certainly wouldn't let this enemy mock the bonds that made him strong. Choji reached for his special pills, the 3 colored pills passed down through generations of the Akimichi clan. These were dangerous, last resort weapons that could multiply a ninja's power, but at terrible cost to their body. The first pill, spinach green, gave a boost to chakra. The second, pale yellow, converted fat directly into chakra reserves. But the third, the red chili pill, was forbidden for a reason. It converted calories directly into chakra at a catastrophic rate, granting power that could rival even Jonin, but burning through the user's life force in the process. Used incorrectly, it would kill the user within minutes. But Choji didn't hesitate. His friends were counting on him. Sasuke needed to be saved, and this enemy stood in his way. He swallowed the chili pill, and his body erupted with red chakra in the form of butterfly wings. His power increased 100-fold, his body slim and defined as all his excess fat converted to pure fighting energy. Jirobo, sensing the shift in their power dynamic, immediately went to his second cursed seal state, his skin turning dark red and his body taking on an ogre-like appearance. The 2 massive chakra signatures clashed in a final desperate exchange. Choji's butterfly mode gave him speed and power beyond anything Jirobo had anticipated. But the cursed seal gave Jirobo durability and raw strength that seemed limitless. They traded devastating blows, neither willing to back down, both pushing their bodies past any rational limit. In the end, Choji's determination proved stronger than Jirobo's raw power. A final strike, channeling every ounce of remaining chakra into his arm, crashed into Jirobo with the force of a meteor. The sound. 4 members' body crumpled, his bones shattering under the impossible impact. He collapsed, defeated, while Choji fell as well, his body shutting down from the terrible strain of the chili pill. He had won, but at a cost that might well be his life. He lay there in the forest, consciousness fading, hoping that his sacrifice had bought enough time, that his friends would succeed where he no longer could. Meanwhile, the remaining 4 members of the recovery team continued their pursuit, only to be intercepted again. This time it was Kidomaru who stayed behind, the 6-armed spider ninja creating massive webs across the forest to slow them down. Neji volunteered to handle this opponent, recognizing that the others needed to keep moving. Like Choji before him, he would buy time, would serve as the sacrifice that allowed the mission to continue. Shikamaru, though pained to leave another teammate behind, accepted the necessity. They were now down to 3, Naurto, Kiba with Akamaru, and Shikamaru himself. The odds were growing worse, but they had no choice but to press forward. Neji's battle with Kidomaru became a deadly game of cat and mouse through the forest. The Spider Ninja's abilities gave him perfect information about Neji's location, as any movement on his webs would send vibrations directly to him. His long-range attacks with his hardened spider silk arrows were devastating, capable of piercing through even Neji's gentle fist. Defense. Kidomaru analyzed his opponent carefully, noting the Byakugan's blind spot and exploiting it ruthlessly. He fired arrow after arrow, each one carefully aimed, each one forcing Neji to defend, to move, to expend chakra. It was a battle of attrition, and Kidomaru was confident he would emerge victorious. But Neji had learned something crucial during the Chunin exams. Destiny wasn't fixed. A person's path could change through determination and effort. The supposed blind spot in his Byakugan, that infinitesimal point directly behind him that the clan had always considered an unchangeable weakness, could be overcome through skill and awareness. As Kidomaru prepared his final, supposedly perfect shot, aiming for that blind spot with an arrow powerful enough to pierce through bone and brain, Neji did something unprecedented. He spun, using his rotation technique not for defense, but for perception, creating a momentary overlap in his vision that let him see the attack coming. His gentle fist strike caught the arrow mid-flight and redirected it back at Kidomaru with devastating accuracy. The Spider Ninja's own perfect shot became his death sentence as the arrow pierced through his chest. Kidomaru fell from his perch in the trees, dying before he hit the ground, disbelief written across his face. He had calculated everything, had exploited every weakness, had fought with all his considerable skill and intelligence. But he had lost anyway, because he had underestimated the boy from the Hyuga clan, had failed to account for the fact that Neji Hyuga no longer believed in the limits that others placed upon him. Neji stood victorious, but exhausted, his chakra nearly depleted, his body suffering from multiple wounds. He watched the Sound 4's barrier flare up ahead and knew he couldn't pursue further. His role in this mission was complete. Now it was up to the others. The 3 remaining pursuers caught up to the Sound 4 again, and once more they had to make a choice. Tayuya stayed behind this time, her flute already raised to her lips, the haunting melody beginning to play. Shikamaru took this opponent, allowing Naruto and Kiba to continue the pursuit. It was down to 2 now, 2 against 2, with Sasuke somewhere ahead, still locked in his transformation coffin. Shikamaru's battle with Tayuya was perhaps the most intellectually demanding of all the confrontations. Her genjutsu assaulted his mind from multiple angles, and her summoned doki provided overwhelming physical force. Shikamaru's shadow possession technique, normally his trump card, seemed almost useless against an opponent who could attack from a distance while remaining safely out of his reach. But Shikamaru's greatest weapon had never been his jutsu. It was his mind, his ability to analyze situations and devise strategies on the fly. He calculated the range of her genjutsu, the patterns of her summon's attacks, the limits of his own shadow techniques. He laid traps within traps, created feints within diversions, gradually maneuvering Tayuya into exactly the position he needed. When she finally fell into his shadow possession, she realized too late that she had been dancing to his tune all along. But before Shikamaru could finish her off, his chakra gave out. The strain of the extended pursuit and multiple battles finally catching up to him, Tayuya broke free, preparing to kill him with ruthless efficiency. That's when Tamari arrived, materializing from the trees with her giant iron fan. The Sand siblings had been sent by Tsunade as backup, arriving just in time to turn the tide of these desperate battles. Tamari's wind techniques, channeled through her fan, were perfectly suited to countering Tayuya's abilities. One massive gust was all it took, a technique that called forth a wind like the sickle of a god, cutting through trees and earth and Tayuya herself. The sound, four-member died instantly, her body crushed by the unstoppable force of wind and debris. Shikamaru, saved at the last possible moment, could only watch in exhausted relief as Tamari secured the area and tended to his wounds. Meanwhile, Naurto and Kiba caught up to Sakon and Ukon, the twin brothers who represented the Soundfall's final line of defense. This battle was vicious and personal, with Kiba's feral fighting style clashing against the brothers' ability to merge and separate at will. Ukon merged with Kiba at the cellular level, beginning the process of killing him from within, a fate that seemed unavoidable. But Akamaru, in a desperate gambit, clawed at Kiba's own body, trying to separate him from Ukon by force. The resulting damage to both Kiba and Akamaru seemed fatal, and the twins prepared to finish them off before pursuing Naurto. But like the others, backup arrived at the crucial moment. Kankuro, wielding his puppet techniques, intercepted the brothers with his most powerful puppet, the Black Ant. The battle was intricate and deadly, puppet versus human flesh, strings versus bones, technique versus raw power. Sakon and Ukon found themselves outmatched by Kankuro's skill and preparation. When they attempted to summon the Rashomon gates as a final defense, Kankuro was ready with a counter. His Black Ant puppet crushed them between its segments, and Sakon and Ukon's story came to an abrupt and brutal end. 3 of the Sound 4 were now dead, their skills and power insufficient to stop Konoha's determination. Choji still lived, barely. Thanks to medical intervention, Neji, though injured, would recover fully. Kiba and Akamaru, despite their terrible wounds, had survived thanks to Kankuro's timely arrival. But Naruto was alone now, continuing the pursuit by himself. He ran through the forest with every ounce of speed he could muster, following the trail that led toward the Land of Sound's border. He could sense that he was close, that Sasuke was just ahead, but then he encountered something unexpected, something that shouldn't have been there at all. Emerging from the coffin that the Sound 4 had been carrying was not Sasuke, but another figure entirely. Kimimaro had arrived, the terminally ill bone-wielding warrior who had once been Orochimaru's intended host. Driven by devotion to his master and refusing to let illness keep him from his duty, Kimimaro had forced his failing body into motion. He would ensure Sasuke reached Orochimaru, no matter what it cost him. Naruto faced this new opponent with everything he had, summoning hundreds of shadow clones to overwhelm the Bone Ninja through sheer numbers. But Kimimaro's abilities were on an entirely different level from the Sound 4. His Shikotsu Miyaku Keke Genkai allowed him to grow bones anywhere on his body, creating weapons and armor that normal attacks simply couldn't penetrate. He waded through Naruto's clones like a farmer cutting wheat, his bone sword slicing through them effortlessly. Every attack Naruto launched was countered, every strategy defeated by the simple fact that Kimimara's defense and offense were one and the same. Bones protected him while simultaneously striking at his enemies, making him nearly untouchable in close combat. Just as Naruto was being overwhelmed, When it seemed like this would be the end of his pursuit, a new figure entered the battle. Rock Lee, who had been ordered to stay behind and recover, had followed the recovery team in secret. Unable to sit idly by while his friends fought, unwilling to let Sasuke be lost without making one final effort, Lee had defied his injuries and his doctor's orders to be here. He intercepted Kimimara's attack that would have killed Naruto, his weights clanging as he blocked a bone strike that should have been impossible to stop. Lee told Naruto to go, to continue the pursuit, while he handled this opponent. There was no time for argument. Naruto looked at his friend, saw the determination blazing in those wide eyes, and ran. He had to trust Lee. He had to believe. He had to keep his promise to Sakura. The battle between Lee and Kimimaro was everything Lee had dreamed of and everything he had feared. Despite his injuries, despite having recently undergone surgery that had a chance of ending his career, Lee fought with the passion and skill that defined his very soul. His taijutsu was flawless, his speed incredible, his dedication absolute. When he accidentally consumed sake thinking it was medicine, his drunken fist style gave him unpredictability that even Kimimaro couldn't fully counter. For a brief, shining moment, Lee seemed to have the advantage, seemed to be on the verge of defeating this enemy through determination and skill alone. But Kimimaro activated his cursed seal, entering its second stage, and the battlefield tilted again. His already formidable abilities multiplied. His bones grew larger and stronger. His healing factor increased. His physical parameters exceeded anything Lee could match. The Bone Ninja struck Lee down, seemingly killing him, and prepared to continue his mission. That's when Gaara of the Sand arrived, the final backup that Tsunade had sent. The Kazekage's son had his own debt to repay to Naruto, his own reasons to help. What followed was a clash between two Kekkei Genkai, Kimamaro's bone manipulation versus Gaara's absolute defense and control of sand. They fought with powers that seemed to defy nature itself. Kimimaro created entire forests of bone spikes erupting from the ground, massive structures that turned the battlefield into a grotesque garden of death. Gaara countered with sand that moved like liquid, that hardened like stone, that crushed anything caught within its grip. When Kimimaro's dance of the clematis technique created a massive drill-like bone weapon, capable of piercing even Gaara's ultimate defense, the Sand Ninja responded with his strongest techniques, burying Kimimaro deep beneath the earth, crushing him under pressure that would have killed anyone else. But Kimimaro forced his way back to the surface through sheer determination, using his dance of the seedling fern to create a massive forest of bone spikes that turned the entire area into a death trap. Gaara and Lee, who had somehow survived despite his injuries, found themselves caught in this forest of death, perched precariously on a small platform of sand. Kimimaro emerged from one of the bone pillars, prepared to deliver the final blow, his hand forming a bone sword aimed directly at Lee's heart. Victory was his. The mission was complete. Orochimaru would be pleased. And then, between one heartbeat and the next, Kimimaro died. His illness, pushed beyond all possible limits, finally claimed him. The bone sword stopped mere inches from Lee's chest, held by a hand that would never move again. Kimimaro fell, his last thought a hope that he had served his master well, that his death had at least accomplished his mission. He passed with his eyes open, still focused on duty even as the light faded from them. Lee and Gaara stood in that forest of bones, surrounded by death and destruction, alive only because their enemy's body had failed before he could strike. It was a sobering victory, if it could even be called that. Kimimaro had completed his mission, had delayed them long enough for Sasuke to reach the border. The entire Sasuke recovery mission, all the battles, all the sacrifices, all the determination, had ultimately failed. Sasuke was now beyond their reach, in the land of sound, heading toward Orochimaru, and Naruto, somewhere ahead, was about to face the final and most difficult confrontation of all. Naruto finally caught up to Sasuke at a place that carried profound symbolic weight: the Valley of the End. This location, carved into existence by the legendary battle between Hashirama Senju and Madara Uchiha decades ago, was marked by two massive statues of the founders of Konoha and the Uchiha clan, respectively. The statues faced each other across a wide river, their hands forming seals, eternally frozen in the moment before their ultimate techniques collided. The waterfall between them crashed down with thunderous force, and the morning sun cast long shadows across the valley floor. It was here, at the border between the land of fire and the land of sound, that Naruto and Sasuke would face each other in battle for the first time, with true killing intent. When Naruto emerged from the forest and saw Sasuke standing at the edge of the cliff overlooking the valley, his first instinct was not to attack, but to talk, to reach out one more time, to try to bring his friend back with words, rather than fists. He called out Sasuke's name, the sound carrying across the water, and Sasuke turned to face him without surprise. Of course, Naruto had followed. Of course, Naruto couldn't just let him go. It was so predictably Naruto, so frustratingly persistent, so typically refusing to accept reality. When reality didn't match his ideals, Sasuke told him to leave, to go back to Konoha, that this didn't concern him. But Naruto stood firm, his jaw set with determination. He had made a promise to Sakura. He had made a promise to himself. He wasn't leaving without Sasuke. They talked there on the cliff, voices raised over the roar of the waterfall. Naruto demanded to know why. Why Sasuke would throw everything away. Why he would abandon his friends and his village for the sake of power. Didn't their bonds mean anything? Didn't Team 7 mean anything? All those missions they had completed together, all the times they had saved each other's lives, all the meals at Ichiraku Ramen, and the training sessions, and the moments of genuine connection, despite their rivalry, did none of that matter to Sasuke? Sasuke's response was cold, brutal in its honesty. Those bonds were exactly what he needed to sever. Itachi had told him that to unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan, the ultimate form of the Uchiha ocular power, he needed to kill his closest friend. And Naruto, despite everything, despite the arguments and the competition and the apparent mutual dislike, was his closest friend. So yes, their bond mattered. It mattered because it was what Sasuke needed to destroy to gain the power he craved. Naruto's eyes widened in horror at the implication. Sasuke was planning to kill him, not out of anger or hatred, but as a stepping stone to greater power, as a sacrifice necessary for his revenge. The thought that their friendship could be reduced to this, that all their shared experiences could be dismissed as nothing more than an obstacle to be overcome, ignited something fierce in Naruto's chest. If Sasuke wanted to leave Konoha chasing power, that was one thing. But if he thought he could kill Naruto to achieve it, he would find that the dead last of their academy class had grown far stronger than he remembered. The conversation escalated, voices rising to shouts. Naruto argued that revenge would only lead to more pain, that Sasuke was throwing away his future for a past he couldn't change. Sasuke countered that Naruto, who had never had a family to lose, could never understand his pain or his purpose. They talked past each other, each locked in their own perspective, unable or unwilling to see through the other's eyes. And with each exchange, it became clearer that words would not resolve this. They were standing on opposite sides of an unbridgeable gap, two paths that had diverged so fundamentally that there was no middle ground left. If Naruto wanted to bring Sasuke back, he would have to do it by force. and if Sasuke wanted to leave, he would have to go through Naruto first. They moved down into the valley itself, descending to the river that ran between the two massive statues. The location was fitting, almost prophetic. Hashirama and Madara, two friends who had dreamed together of creating a village where children wouldn't have to die in endless wars, had ultimately faced each other here as enemies when their visions for that village proved incompatible. Now, decades later, two boys who had grown up together, who had fought side by side, who represented different responses to similar pain, stood in that same valley, preparing to fight with everything they had. History echoing itself. The cycle of hatred perpetuating across generations. The battle began with taijutsu, pure hand-to-hand combat that showcased how much both of them had grown since their academy days. They moved with incredible speed, trading blows that would have disabled most genin, their fists and feet blurring as they tested each other's reflexes and combat skills. Naruto's style was more improvised, more chaotic, leveraging his unpredictability and his ability to create shadow clones that attacked from multiple angles. Sasuke's style was more refined, more precise, his Sharingan activated and tracking Naruto's movements, predicting his attacks before they landed and countering with surgical accuracy. They were evenly matched in this phase, neither gaining a clear advantage, both proving that they had earned their reputations as the strongest genin of their generation. But taijutsu was only the beginning. Sasuke leaped back, creating distance, and formed the hand seals for his fire style, Fireball Jutsu. A massive sphere of flame erupted from his mouth, racing across the river toward Naruto with heat that distorted the air around it. Naruto responded by summoning shadow clones, using them as a shield wall that absorbed the attack while he moved to a better position. The battlefield became chaos, with clones appearing and disappearing, fire techniques scorching the earth, and both combatants pushing themselves harder with each exchange. Sasuke's Sharingan gave him an edge in seeing through Naruto's clone tactics, but Naruto's unpredictability and sheer number of clones made it impossible for Sasuke to capitalize on that advantage fully. Then Naruto tapped into the Nine-Tails chakra, and everything changed. His eyes turned red, his whisker marks darkened and became more pronounced, and a cloak of malevolent red energy surrounded his body. This was the power of the Nine-Tails, the demon fox sealed within him since birth, and it multiplied his strength and speed dramatically. His attacks became more savage, more feral, driven by the fox's hatred and bloodlust. Sasuke found himself on the defensive, struggling to counter the sudden increase in power. Each of Naruto's strikes carried enough force to shatter stone, and the red chakra that surrounded him seemed to burn anything it touched. For the first time in the battle, Sasuke felt genuine fear. This wasn't the Naruto he knew, wasn't the clumsy kid from the academy. This was a monster, barely contained, threatening to overwhelm him completely. In response, Sasuke activated his curse mark. The 3 tomo pattern on his neck spread across his body in flame-like marks, and his power surged to match Naruto's Nine-Tails enhancement. His Sharingan evolved mid-battle, gaining a 3rd tomo in each eye, maximizing his ability to perceive and copy his opponent's techniques. They clashed again, and this time the impact of their collision sent shockwaves across the valley, causing the water of the river to spray upward in massive geysers. They were no longer fighting at genin level. They had transcended that category entirely, their power now rivaling experienced jonin, their battle reshaping the landscape around them with its sheer intensity. Naruto created a massive Rasengan, the spinning sphere of chakra that Jiraiya had taught him, enhanced with the Nine-Tails' red energy until it seemed to pulse with malevolent life. Sasuke countered with his Chidori, the lightning blade technique that Kakashi had passed down to him, crackling with electricity so intense that it sang in the air. They charged at each other across the river, their signature techniques held ready, knowing that this clash might decide everything. The Rasengan and Chidori connected mid-river, and for a moment, there was perfect balance. Red chakra and blue lightning fought for dominance, neither willing to give ground, both techniques grinding against each other with a sound like the world tearing itself apart. Then they were both thrown backward by the explosive release of energy, crashing into opposite sides of the valley. They struggled to their feet, both wounded, both exhausted, but neither willing to quit. Naruto's left arm hung uselessly at his side, damaged by the recoil from his own technique. Sasuke's body bore burns and cuts from Naruto's attacks. His breathing labored. They stared at each other across the ruined battlefield, and in that moment, something passed between them. Understanding, perhaps. Recognition that they had both grown far beyond their starting points. Acknowledgement of the bond they shared, even as they fought to sever it. But the battle wasn't over. Sasuke made a decision, one that would change the nature of their fight fundamentally. He activated the second level of his curse mark, something he had never done before, unleashing the full power that Orochimaru's seal could provide. His body transformed dramatically. His skin turned dark grey, almost black. His hair grew longer and darker, taking on a bluish tint. And from his back, massive hand-shaped wings emerged, structures that gave him the power of flight, while also serving as weapons and shields. A dark, star-shaped mark appeared across the bridge of his nose, and his entire presence seemed to darken, as if he had crossed a threshold into something no longer entirely human. In this form, Sasuke's power multiplied exponentially. He was now stronger than Naruto's one-tailed form, faster than anything Naruto could track, more dangerous than he had ever been before his Sharingan. Combined with the curse mark's enhancement, gave him near-perfect combat awareness. His chakra reserves seemed limitless, and his emotional state had shifted, the curse mark amplifying his darker impulses, stripping away whatever hesitation or mercy might have remained. He attacked Naruto with renewed fury, his wings serving as additional limbs that struck from unexpected angles. His Chidori, powered by the curse mark, evolved into something more powerful, electricity arcing off his hand in broader patterns, more destructive, more lethal. Naruto struggled to keep up. Even with the Nine-Tails chakra flowing through him, even with his determination pushed to its absolute limit, he was being overwhelmed. Sasuke's wing caught him mid-jump and sent him crashing into one of the massive statues with enough force to crack the stone. He fell, landing hard on the cliff face, his body barely responding to his commands. Above him, Sasuke hovered on those dark wings, his form silhouetted against the sky, looking down at his former teammate with eyes that showed no recognition, no hesitation. This was it. The end. Sasuke descended, his Chidori already forming in his hand, prepared to deliver the final blow to kill his closest friend and unlock the Mangekyo Sharingan in the process. But as Sasuke came closer, as the moment approached when he would have to actually take Naruto's life, something happened. Memories flooded his consciousness, unbidden and unwanted. He saw them as children in the academy, saw Naruto trying so hard to gain recognition while everyone dismissed him. He saw Team 7's first mission, the bridge in the land of waves, Naruto jumping in front of his attacks to protect Sasuke from Haku's needles. He saw the Chunin exams, saw Naruto fighting Neji with everything he had, proving that destiny could be overcome through determination. He saw countless small moments, little interactions that had seemed meaningless at the time but which had collectively formed something that Sasuke had never wanted to acknowledge. A genuine bond. A friendship that had formed despite his efforts to remain isolated. And he saw himself, reflected in Naruto's determination. Naruto, who had been alone just like Sasuke. Naruto, who had lost his parents just like Sasuke Naruto, who should have been consumed by hatred for the village that had shunned him, for the demons sealed inside him against his will, for the childhood of loneliness and rejection he had endured. But Naruto hadn't chosen hatred. Naruto had chosen something different. He had chosen to keep reaching out, to keep trying to connect with others, to keep believing that bonds between people mattered more than power or revenge. And that choice, that fundamental difference in their responses to similar pain, was what separated them. Sasuke's Chidori struck, but not to kill. Instead of piercing Naruto's heart, it hit the headband that Naruto wore, the symbol of his identity as a hidden leaf ninja. The blow sent Naruto spinning, leaving him unconscious on the valley floor. Sasuke stood over his defeated rival, his hands still crackling with electrical energy, and he made a choice. He could still do it. He could still kill Naruto right now, while he lay defenseless and claim the power he sought. But he wouldn't. Not like this. Not through Itachi's path. He would find his own way to power, would gain strength through his own methods, not by following his brother's twisted instructions. Killing Naruto wouldn't bring back his family. It wouldn't undo the massacre. It would just make him into the kind of person Itachi wanted him to be, a vessel of pure hatred with no identity beyond revenge. The rain began to fall as Sasuke turned away from Naruto's unconscious form. He looked up at the sky, letting the water wash over his face, and for a moment, he allowed himself to feel the weight of what he was doing. He was leaving. He was turning his back on Konoha, on Team 7, on the life he could have had. He was choosing a dark path with no guarantee of success, with every likelihood that it would destroy him long before he ever reached his goal. But it was his choice, his path, his decision, not Itachi's, not Orochimaru's, not anyone else's. He would walk this road alone, would face whatever consequences came from it, and would accept responsibility for the person he became in the process. His headband loosened and fell, clattering on the stones next to Naruto's unconscious body, the symbol of his connection to the hidden leaf, now discarded, no longer part of his identity. Sasuke walked away, without looking back, heading towards the border, towards the land of sound, toward Orochimaru, and whatever future awaited him there. Behind him, Naruto lay in the rain, his promise to Sakura unfulfilled, his friend beyond his reach, his first real failure as a ninja, complete and absolute. The statues of Hashirama and Madara looked down on the scene, silent witnesses to another generation's tragedy, another cycle of the same old pain. Minutes or hours later, it was hard to tell through the haze of unconsciousness, Kakashi Hatake arrived at the Valley of the End. He had received word of the situation, had rushed from his own mission to try to intercept Sasuke before it was too late. But he was too late. The rain had washed away the scent trail, making pursuit impossible. And Naruto, his student, his responsibility, lay defeated in the mud and rain, bearing the weight of a promise he couldn't keep. Kakashi knelt beside Naruto, checking his injuries, assessing the damage. Physically, the boy would recover, but the emotional and psychological wounds from this failure, those would take much longer to heal. Kakashi gently lifted Naruto onto his back, preparing to carry him home. As he did, he looked out across the valley, toward the border that Sasuke had crossed. He couldn't help but see the parallels, couldn't help but remember another time, another generation, another student who had chosen darkness over light. Orochimaru had been Hiruzen's student, brilliant and powerful, someone with incredible potential who had been corrupted by his obsession with forbidden jutsu and immortality. Now Sasuke, his own student, was following a similar path. The cycle continued, teachers watching helplessly as their students made the same mistakes, history repeating with minor variations but the same tragic outcomes. The copy ninja began the journey back to Konoha, carrying Naruto through the rain, thinking about failure and responsibility and the burden of being a sensei who couldn't save his own students from themselves. He thought about Obito, his teammate who had died saving him, whose eye now resided in Kakashi's skull, giving him the Sharingan that had become his trademark. He thought about Rin, another teammate lost to tragedy and circumstance. And now Sasuke, the last Uchiha, walking away from everything, choosing revenge over healing, isolation over connection. Kakashi had failed again. Failed to protect his student, failed to guide him properly, failed to break the cycle of hatred that seemed to define the Uchiha clan's destiny. As they traveled through the forest, heading home, Naruto slowly regained consciousness. His first words were questions about Sasuke, desperate inquiries about whether Kakashi had caught him, whether there was still a chance to bring him back. When Kakashi confirmed that Sasuke had escaped, that he was now beyond their reach in enemy territory, Naruto's expression crumbled. The weight of his failure, the knowledge that he had broken his promise to Sakura, that he had let his friend disappear into darkness, was almost too much to bear. Tears mixed with rain on his face, and for the first time since the battle began, Naruto allowed himself to fully feel the pain of loss. The hospital rooms of Konoha were filled that day with the wounded members of the Sasuke recovery team. Choji lay in critical condition, his body ravaged by the effects of the chili pill, his life hanging by a thread, despite Tsunade's best medical interventions. The Akimichi clan's medicinal research provided treatments that prevented immediate death, but his recovery would be long and uncertain. Neji occupied another room, his injuries severe but not life-threatening, his body slowly healing under the careful attention of the medical corps. Kiba and Akamaru were being treated together, the bond between ninja and companion dog, meaning that separating them, even for medical treatment, would slow their healing. Both had suffered grievous wounds during their battle against Sakon and Ukon, but both would live. Shikamaru sat alone in his hospital room, physically uninjured but emotionally devastated. As the mission's leader, he felt the weight of responsibility for its failure. He had made the tactical decisions, had chosen when to split the team, had determined who fought whom. And despite everyone surviving, despite them all fighting with incredible courage and skill, the mission had failed. Sasuke was gone. The recovery team had been defeated. As the leader, that failure rested squarely on Shikamaru's shoulders. He stared at the ceiling, replaying every decision, every choice, wondering if there had been some way to succeed, some strategy he had missed that could have changed the outcome. His father found him there, lost in self-recrimination and doubt. Shikaku Nara was a wise man, a seasoned jonin who had led countless missions and experienced both victory and defeat. He sat with his son and listened as Shikamaru poured out his frustrations, his conviction that he was unsuited for leadership, that he should give up on being a shinobi entirely. If this was what it meant, Shikaku let him talk until the words ran dry, then shared his own perspective. Missions failed sometimes. People made mistakes. Leaders had to make impossible choices with incomplete information. The mark of a good leader wasn't never failing. It was learning from failure, adapting, growing stronger for the next challenge. He told Shikamaru about his own first mission as a Chunin leader, how it had ended in disaster, how he had felt the same crushing weight of responsibility and inadequacy, but he hadn't quit. He had analyzed what went wrong, had learned from his mistakes, had become better. And now, he was one of Konoha's most respected tactical minds. Shikamaru could do the same. could use this experience as a foundation for growth rather than a reason to quit. The choice was his. He could let this defeat define him, or he could let it refine him. Shikaku's words didn't erase the pain of failure, didn't make the mission's outcome any easier to accept. But they gave Shikamaru a different perspective, a way forward that wasn't just surrender and self-destruction. Naruto's recovery was physical, but his true wounds were psychological. When Sakura came to visit him in the hospital, he couldn't meet her eyes. He had made her a promise, had looked her in the face and sworn with absolute certainty that he would bring Sasuke back. And he had failed, spectacularly, completely, utterly failed. Sakura found him sitting on his hospital bed, staring at his hands, his expression more defeated than she had ever seen. She approached slowly, unsure of what to say, how to comfort him, how to even process her own feelings about Sasuke's defection and Naruto's failure to stop it. But when she reached out, when she placed her hand gently on his, Naruto looked up and saw something unexpected in her expression. Not anger, not blame, not the crushing disappointment he had expected. Instead, he saw understanding, compassion, and gratitude. She thanked him for trying, for risking his life, for going so far and fighting so hard to keep a promise that never should have been his burden to carry in the first place. She had been unfair to him, she said, placing the weight of her own feelings on his shoulders, asking him to fix something that she herself couldn't fix. Sasuke's choice to leave wasn't Naruto's failure. It was Sasuke's choice, and Naruto had done everything humanly possible to change that choice. As they sat there together, two members of Team 7 dealing with the absence of the third, Sakura made a decision. She asked Tsunade to take her on as an apprentice, to train her in medical ninjutsu and combat techniques, to help her become strong enough that she would never again have to watch helplessly while her teammates fought. She was done being the weak link, done being the one who could only cheer from the sidelines while others risked their lives. When they saw Sasuke again, and she believed they would see him again, she wanted to be standing beside Naruto as an equal, as someone who could actually help, as a kunoichi worthy of Team 7's legacy. Naruto listened to her determination, heard the steel in her voice, and felt his own resolve solidifying in response. He made a new promise, one born not from obligation or romantic feelings, but from genuine conviction he would bring Sasuke back. Not for Sakura's sake, though he still cared about her feelings. Not because of some abstract duty to his team, though that mattered too, but because Sasuke was his friend, his rival, his brother, in all but blood. And friends didn't abandon each other. Friends didn't give up, no matter how far someone fell, no matter how dark the path they walked. So Naruto would get stronger. He would train harder than ever before, and when he saw Sasuke again, he would be powerful enough to drag him back to Konoha by force if necessary, to knock sense into that stubborn Uchiha head, to prove that their bond was stronger than Sasuke's hatred. The village itself was shaken by news of Sasuke's defection. The last Uchiha, one of their most promising young shinobi, had joined Orochimaru willingly. The political implications were significant. The intelligence compromise was substantial. And the emotional impact on those who had known Sasuke personally was devastating. His classmates from the academy couldn't believe it. Sasuke, who had always seemed so focused and determined, who had appeared to have his path clearly mapped out, had thrown it all away for revenge, some understood. Having their own complicated relationships with family and duty, others condemned him as a traitor who had betrayed everything Konoha stood for. Kakashi visited the memorial stone, the monument to fallen shinobi, where he often went to think and remember. He stood before it, looking at the names carved into its surface, and added mentally the name of Sasuke Uchiha, not dead, but lost nonetheless. Another student he had failed to protect, another young person whose potential would now be warped by darkness and revenge. He thought about what he could have done differently, what signs he had missed, what words he should have said. The curse mark had been a warning he hadn't taken seriously enough. Sasuke's obsession with Itachi had been obvious, but Kakashi hadn't known how to address it. And now it was too late. His student was gone, walking the same path that Orochimaru had walked, that so many revenge-driven shinobi had walked before him. As Kakashi stood there in contemplation, he received a visitor. Jiraiya, the Toad Sage, one of the legendary Sannin, approached with his characteristic casual demeanor that hid a sharp mind and serious purpose. They discussed the situation, the implications of Sasuke joining Orochimaru, the danger that posed to Konoha and to Sasuke himself. Jiraiya revealed something that Kakashi hadn't known. Orochimaru had already taken a new host body before Sasuke arrived. The Snake Sannin's body transfer jutsu could only be used once every 3 years or so, meaning Sasuke had a limited window before he would be in immediate danger of being possessed. 3 years, perhaps slightly less, before Orochimaru would try to take Sasuke's body and claim the Sharingan for himself. This revelation changed the calculus of the situation. They had time, not much but some, to find a way to reach Sasuke before it was too late, but it also meant they couldn't wait indefinitely. A rescue mission into enemy territory would be incredibly dangerous, likely impossible without significant preparation and power, which brought Jiraiya to the real reason for his visit. He wanted to take Naruto away from the village for an extended training journey. 2.5 years, to be precise, during which he would train the boy in advanced techniques, help him better control the Nine Tails' power, and prepare him for the threats that were gathering on the horizon. The Akatsuki, the organization that Itachi belonged to, were beginning to move. Their goal was to capture the tailed beasts, the 9 immensely powerful chakra entities sealed within human hosts across the ninja world. Naruto, as the Jinchuriki of the Nine Tails, was one of their primary targets. He needed to become much stronger, and quickly, if he hoped to survive their attention. Moreover, if Naruto wanted to have any chance of bringing Sasuke back when the time came, he would need power far beyond what he currently possessed. The training journey would be grueling, would push Naruto to his absolute limits, but it was necessary. Necessary for his survival, necessary for his goals, necessary for the confrontations that were inevitably coming. The village slowly absorbed the shock of Sasuke's defection and began to move forward. Team 7 was temporarily dissolved, with Kakashi taking on different responsibilities, while his remaining students pursued their own training paths. Sakura began her apprenticeship under Tsunade, learning medical ninjutsu and precise chakra control, developing the monstrous strength that would become her trademark. Shikamaru, after his father's counsel, decided to continue as a shinobi, determined to become a better leader, to never again experience the helplessness of watching his team fall while his strategies proved insufficient. The others of the Konoha 11 continued their own journeys, each growing stronger in their own way, each carrying the knowledge that someone from their generation had chosen to become a missing ninja, a traitor, an enemy. The failure of the Sasuke recovery mission rippled outward in ways both obvious and subtle. It changed how the village thought about their young shinobi, revealed vulnerabilities in their rapid response capabilities, and demonstrated that even genin could face Jonin-level threats when circumstances aligned poorly. It also showed the strength of the bonds between Konoha's young generation, the willingness of kids barely out of the academy to risk their lives for each other, to fight battles they couldn't win, rather than abandon a comrade. Those who had participated in the mission were changed by it, marked by the experience in ways that would define their future paths. They had seen real combat, had faced real enemies who wanted them dead, had come within inches of dying themselves, and they had survived that survival. That baptism by fire would serve as foundation for everything that came after. The day of departure arrived with little fanfare. Naruto had recovered from his physical injuries, though the psychological wound of his failure still ached like a fresh bruise. He stood at the gates of Konoha with a small travel pack, looking back at the village he was about to leave for 2.5 years. It seemed surreal. The idea of being away for so long, of missing so much of the village's daily life. But Jiraiya had been clear. If Naruto wanted to become strong enough to achieve his goals, to protect his precious people, to bring Sasuke back when the time came, he needed training that couldn't be accomplished while living comfortably in the village. They would travel across the ninja world, seeking out challenges and knowledge, pushing Naruto's limits until he transcended them. Jiraiya explained the training's purpose with his characteristic blend of seriousness and levity. Naruto needed to learn how to better access and control the Nine Tails chakra without losing himself to the fox's influence. The transformation during the Valley of the End battle had been dangerous, bringing Naruto close to completely losing control. If he went much further, if he accessed more tails, he might not be able to come back from it. Jiraiya had seen what happened when Jinchuriki lost control, had witnessed the destruction they could cause. He had techniques and seals that could help Naruto maintain his identity even while using the demon's power. But learning them would require intensive, focused training, far from anything that could be damaged by mistakes. Beyond controlling the Nine Tails, Naruto needed to expand his jutsu repertoire. He had the Shadow Clone technique and the Rasengan, both powerful tools, but he needed more options, more versatility. Jiraiya would teach him advanced techniques, would help him develop his own fighting style that played to his strengths, would show him the difference between a skilled genin and a true master ninja. They would encounter various challenges during their journey, face different opponents with different abilities, and each encounter would serve as a lesson that no academy could provide: real combat experience, practical knowledge, the kind of education that could only be gained by living as a traveling shinobi rather than a village defender. The training would also focus on genjutsu defense, a critical weakness that Sasuke would certainly exploit when they met again. The Sharingan made the Uchiha clan masters of illusionary techniques, and Sasuke's skills in that area would only grow under Orochimaru's tutelage. Naruto needed to be able to recognize when he was caught in a genjutsu and break free from it, or better yet, avoid being caught in the first place. This required developing his chakra control and his mental discipline, neither of which came naturally to Naruto's impulsive, straightforward personality. But Jiraiya was patient, experienced in teaching difficult students, and confident he could bring out Naruto's hidden potential given enough time. Before leaving, Naruto visited Ichiraku Ramen one last time, sharing a meal with Jiraiya at his favorite restaurant. The old man insisted on treating, claiming it was a farewell gift, though Naruto suspected Jiraiya just wanted to enjoy good ramen before months of traveling and camping. They ate in companionable silence, broken occasionally by Naruto's enthusiastic praise of the food and Jiraiya's chuckling at his students' appetites. The Ichiraku family, Tuchi and his daughter Ayame, wished Naruto well on his journey and made him promise to visit when he returned. The ramen stand had been one of the few places where Naruto had always felt welcomed, even before he became a celebrated hero. That acceptance, that simple kindness, meant more to him than they probably realized. As they prepared to depart, walking toward the village gates, they encountered Tsunade. The fifth Hokage had come to see them off, though she pretended it was just coincidence that she happened to be near the gates. She gave Jiraiya pointed instructions about keeping Naruto safe, about not leading the boy into unnecessary dangers, just because the old pervert wanted to research his novels. Jiraiya protested his innocence with exaggerated offense, but his eyes held genuine seriousness when he promised to guard Naruto with his life. The Toad Sage understood the responsibility he was taking on. This wasn't just training a talented student. This was preparing the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki for the battles ahead, shaping someone who might one day be crucial to the entire ninja world's survival. Tsunade also had words for Naruto, advice that came from her decades of experience and her own journey from broken princess of the Senju to legendary Sannin to Hokage. She told him that strength wasn't just about power, wasn't just about being able to destroy enemies or win fights. Real strength came from protecting what mattered, from standing up for your beliefs, even when everyone told you they were impossible, from having the courage to keep going even after crushing defeats. Naruto had that kind of strength already, she said. He just needed to develop the skills to match his spirit. When he returned in 2.5 years, she expected him to be an entirely different shinobi, one who could stand proud as a true ninja of the Hidden Leaf. Sakura arrived just as they were about to leave, slightly out of breath from running. She had been training with Tsunade and almost missed their departure. She and Naruto shared a moment of understanding, two teammates who would both be gone for years, pursuing their own paths to strength, each driven by the same absent third member of their team. She didn't ask him to renew his promise about bringing Sasuke back. She didn't need to. They both knew that promise still stood, that it would always stand until it was fulfilled or became impossible. Instead, she simply told him to be careful, to learn everything he could, and to come back stronger. Strong enough that next time, when Team 7 faced a crisis, they would all be ready to handle it together. The gates of Konoha closed behind Naruto and Jiraiya as they set out on the road. The village grew smaller in the distance, and Naruto couldn't help but look back repeatedly, watching his home disappear beyond the trees and hills. He thought about everyone he was leaving behind. Sakura, who would be training with Tsunade. Kakashi, who would be taking on new missions and responsibilities. The others of the Konoha 11, who would continue growing and developing their own skills. And Sasuke, somewhere out there in enemy territory, walking a dark path that was carrying him further from the person he used to be with every passing day. Jiraiya noticed his student's silence and understood it. The old sage had made similar journeys in his own youth, had left the village numerous times in pursuit of various goals. He knew the bittersweet feeling of watching home fade into the distance, the mixture of excitement for adventure ahead and melancholy for what was being left behind. He let Naruto have his moment of reflection, didn't try to cheer him up with jokes or distract him with conversation. Some thoughts needed to be fully felt, some emotions processed completely before they could be set aside. This was Naruto's transition from one phase of his life to another, and forcing him to rush through it would do more harm than good. As evening approached, and they made camp for the night, Jiraiya finally broke the comfortable silence. He talked about the journey ahead, not in specifics, but in broad strokes. They would visit multiple countries, seeking out different environments for training. Mountains, where Naruto could build endurance through thin air and treacherous climbs. Deserts, where he could learn to manage his chakra under extreme heat and dehydration. Forests, where he could practice stealth and tracking. Each location would serve a purpose, would teach different lessons, would contribute to Naruto's development as a complete shinobi rather than just a powerful brawler. Jiraiya also spoke about the nature of shinobi conflicts, about the cycle of hatred that perpetuated itself across generations, about the tragedy of talented young ninja being consumed by revenge or ambition, or circumstances beyond their control. He had seen it happen countless times during his long life. Orochimaru, his own teammate and brother in all but blood, had been lost to obsession with immortality and forbidden jutsu. Now Sasuke was following a similar path. And there would be others in the future, always others, because the shinobi system itself created these tragedies, trained children to be weapons, and then acted surprised when they broke under the pressure. But Jiraiya also spoke of hope, of the possibility for change, of the prophecy that the great Toad Sage had shared with him decades ago. Somewhere in the ninja world, there would emerge a child of prophecy, someone who would either bring unprecedented destruction or usher in a new era of peace. Jiraiya had once thought that person might be Nagato, one of his former students from the Rain Country who had possessed the legendary Rinnegan, but he had lost contact with those students years ago, didn't know if they had survived the wars that constantly plagued their homeland. Now, he wondered if Naruto might be the child of prophecy. The boy certainly had the determination, the charisma, the ability to change people's hearts that such a role would require. Naruto listened to all this with his usual mix of attention and distraction, understanding some of the deeper implications while missing others entirely. Prophecy and cycles of hatred were abstract concepts to him, interesting but not immediately relevant to his goals. What mattered was getting stronger, bringing Sasuke back, and eventually becoming Hokage. Everything else was just philosophy. Jiraiya smiled at his student's practical focus. That single-minded determination was both Naruto's greatest strength and his greatest weakness. It drove him to achieve impossible things, but it also made him blind to complexities and nuances that might be important. Well, that's what this training journey was for. To round out his skills, to give him perspective, to help him understand that being a great shinobi required more than just power and determination. As the fire crackled between them and the stars emerged overhead, Naruto felt a shift in his mindset. The pain of failing to save Sasuke was still there, would probably always be there as a reminder and a motivation. But alongside that pain was something else now. Anticipation. Excitement. The knowledge that he was about to embark on an adventure that would define the next stage of his life. 2.5 years with Jiraiya the Toad Sage, learning from one of the legendary Sannin, becoming strong enough to face any challenge. When he returned to Konoha, he would be different, stronger, wiser, more capable, ready to fulfill his promise, ready to become Hokage, ready to face whatever the future held. The training journey had begun. And though Naruto couldn't know it yet, though neither he nor Jiraiya could predict exactly what would happen over the coming years, this departure from Konoha marked a turning point. When Naruto returned, nothing would be the same. Not him, not his friends, not the threats they faced, not the world itself. The stage was being set for conflicts that would shake the entire shinobi world to its foundations. But for now, on this quiet evening in the forest, a boy and his teacher shared a meal and prepared to sleep under the stars, ready to face whatever tomorrow would bring. The original Naruto series ends with departures and new beginnings. Sasuke walking into darkness with Orochimaru, choosing power over bonds, revenge over healing Naruto, leaving with Jiraiya, determined to grow strong enough to bring his friend back, to protect those he cares about, to eventually become Hokage Sakura, beginning her training with Tsunade, refusing to remain the weak link, preparing to stand as an equal alongside her teammates when they reunite 3 members of Team 7, each on their own path, each driven by their own demons and dreams, each growing toward the people they would eventually become. The journey chronicled in the original series took us from a lonely boy pulling pranks for attention to a hero who saved his village. We watched Naruto make his first friends, form his first genuine connections, discover that he wasn't alone and never had to be alone again. We saw him face enemies that seemed impossible to defeat, overcome obstacles through sheer determination and clever thinking, prove again and again that being the dead last of the academy meant nothing compared to having people you wanted to protect. We witnessed bonds form between unlikely allies, saw friendships transcend rivalry and competition, felt the weight of promises made, and kept even at tremendous personal cost. But we also saw the darker side of the shinobi world, the cycle of hatred that consumed people like Gaara and Sasuke, turning victims into potential victimizers, the cost of revenge, the way pursuing it destroyed everything else in a person's life, until nothing remained but the goal and the emptiness. The tragedy of children trained as weapons, of kids who should have been in school and playing instead, learning how to kill and being sent into life or death situations. The complexities of loyalty and duty, of following orders even when they seemed wrong, of systems that perpetuated their own existence regardless of the human cost. The original series planted seeds that would grow in Shippuden. Sasuke's defection and the promise to bring him back would drive much of the future plot. The Akatsuki's interest in the tailed beasts would create conflicts spanning the entire ninja world. Naruto's growth as a shinobi and as a person would continue, pushing him toward his ultimate goal of becoming Hokage, while forcing him to confront what that title really means. What kind of person can truly lead and inspire others? The bonds formed during these early arcs, tested and strengthened through adversity, would prove crucial in the battles ahead. Looking back on the journey from the academy to the Valley of the End, the transformation in Naruto is remarkable. He began as someone everyone dismissed, someone with more enthusiasm than skill, someone who seemed destined to fail. But through determination, through refusing to give up, no matter how many times he was knocked down, through finding people who believed in him and whom he could believe in, Naruto became someone truly formidable, not just in terms of power, though he had certainly grown stronger, but in terms of character, of conviction, of the ability to inspire others and change their perspectives through his actions and words. The final image of the original series is both an ending and a beginning, an ending to the story of Team 7 as it was, to the innocence of early missions and simple goals, to the time when the biggest concern was passing a bell test or completing a C rank mission that unexpectedly became A rank, but also a beginning to new stories, to the characters they would become, to the challenges they would face, to the choices that would define them. Going forward, Naruto, Sasuke, and Sakura were no longer the kids who graduated from the academy. They were shinobi now, for better and worse, carrying the weight and responsibility that title implied. As you drift towards sleep, let yourself carry these stories with you. The boy who refused to give up, the genius consumed by revenge, the girl who decided to become strong enough to stand beside them, the teacher who tried to guide them through impossible circumstances, the village that served as home and battleground both, the bonds that proved stronger than hatred, at least for a while. These aren't just tales from a fictional ninja world. They're stories about determination in the face of adversity, about the importance of connections between people, about choosing how to respond to pain and loss, about the courage required to keep reaching out, even when you've been hurt. The road ahead for Naruto will be long and difficult. There will be battles that make the Valley of the End look like a mere skirmish. There will be truths revealed that shake his understanding of everything he thought he knew. There will be choices with no right answers, only less wrong ones. But he won't face any of it alone. The bonds he's formed, the promises he's made, the person he's chosen to be, all of that will carry him forward. And someday, when he and Sasuke meet again, those bonds will be tested in ways neither of them can yet imagine. But that's a story for another time, for when we continue with Shippuden and the next chapter of this journey. For now, let these images settle in your mind. The hidden leaf village, rebuilding after invasion. The Sasuke recovery team giving everything they had. Naruto and Sasuke clashing in the Valley of the End. Sakura watching her teammates leave on their separate paths. Jiraiya and Naruto walking away from Konoha toward years of training and growth. Hold these moments, these emotions, these truths about friendship and determination and the choices that define us. The original Naruto series gave us a foundation, showed us who these characters were at their core before the larger conflicts began. It taught us that being Hokage means being someone others can believe in, someone who never gives up on their precious people, someone who stands as a symbol of hope even in the darkest times. It showed us that destiny isn't fixed, that effort can overcome natural talent, that bonds between people are the greatest strength any shinobi possesses. And it demonstrated that sometimes, despite our best efforts, despite fighting with everything we have, we can't save everyone. But that doesn't mean we stop trying. So as you close your eyes and let sleep claim you, remember Naruto's promise. Remember his determination to bring Sasuke back, no matter how long it takes or how impossible it seems. Remember Sakura's resolve to become strong enough to help. Remember the Sasuke recovery team fighting against impossible odds. Remember every moment, every battle, every emotion that brought us from the beginning to this ending. That is also a beginning. And know that the story continues, that the bonds formed here will endure through everything that comes next. That this is just one chapter in a much larger tale of ninja, friendship, and the long, difficult journey toward peace. Thank you for joining me on this exploration of Naruto's original series. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the lore and story, please like and subscribe to the Lore Loft. Until next time, sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with the spirit of determination that defines the greatest ninja of Konoha.